Okay, so Ubisoft just had their general shareholder meeting, or Assemblée Générale 2025, and I actually went onto their investor page and found the full meeting. It's quite dry. I mean, the first big chunk of it is Mr. Yves Guillemot, the CEO, who we talk about a lot, quadruple A man himself. He talked about their current vision for everything, casually announced a few things that haven't been announced, went through a bunch of financial documents and things and all of that. And as you can see, the way they have these websites set up is that they have like the slideshow on one half of it, of the web page, and then you can fast forward and then, you know, it syncs with the video, which is kind of cool. But it's all in French. Oops. They do have an English translator for a lot of this. So for certain sections of it, when they're doing like Q&A, for example.
Coming consoles such as the Switch 2, it will have a new version of the game. So improvements on the game have not finished, and we will continue improving it for future releases. As for the upcoming portfolio, we have already given some insight into some projects that are in the pipeline. Frederick will give you as much information as possible.
So it's a little dry. It's a little dry. So we're going to rely on excerpts as we talk about this, because it's a live translation from a Frenchman talking about the finances and stuff. So it's a little dry and tough to appreciate. But what we wanted to talk about today in this clip is specifically that they responded to Star Wars Outlaws. So the interesting thing about these meetings, which makes them quite fun and entertaining, is that you see all these people sitting in the chairs all around. In case you don't know what a shareholder meeting like this is, typically what happens is you have executives up on stage. In this case, you just have Yves Guillemot, the CEO, and I forget his name. I believe this is the CFO, I want to say. Don't quote me on that. But they have a couple of executives on stage, and then these people, some of them are employees that are representing, you know, a studio or something, but a lot of them represent investment firms, a lot of them. So each one of these people could represent a firm that holds, you know, $10 million worth of Ubisoft stock, or potentially even $1 billion worth. So there's some big players in this room. You see the people with the slicked back hair. These are the guys to watch out for. So the reason that's interesting is because these are people who in large part have actual influence. Like if they tell Eve, hey, we're dissatisfied with X, fix it, or we're going to dump our shares, causing the stock price to plummet. Eve has to listen. Like they have actual sway. Some of these people, not all of them. Some of them have much, you know, very little sway. Some of them have a lot of sway, okay? Some of them do. And that's why it's all the more interesting that they kind of got grilled on a couple of key points. So one of the things they got grilled about was AC Shadows. They got grilled about the stock price dropping like 40% in a decade. They got grilled about, I think in some cases it was way more than 40%, but that's what the shareholder meant. They got grilled about how they've approached like ongoing development with games featuring cultural issue discussions and things when that seems to be an albatross around those games' necks. Specifically asked about wokeism within game development, within AC Shadows and things, and how that affected their development pipeline going forward. A lot of interesting little tidbits. A lot of it you don't get firm answers on, but one person asked very specifically about Star Wars Outlaws and what happened there. And Yves Guillemot did respond to it in a classic Yves Guillemot way. He said, for Star Wars Outlaws, we didn't reach sales targets, and the game suffered from a number of items, which he's saying like there's many reasons why it failed. But first, it suffered from the fact that it was released at a time when the brand, Star Wars, the brand that it belonged to, was in a bit of choppy waters, and the game had a few items that we still needed to polish, and they were polished and debugged in the early weeks, but it did affect sales volumes. Now, some people have taken this and run with it and be like, oh yeah, Star Wars doing badly. Have you seen, you know, the recent resurgence of Star Wars, Battlefront 2's exploding? Yes. That's this year. Last year, just to remind you where we were, because I pulled it up because I wanted to make sure. Do you guys remember the Acolyte? Do you remember the Acolyte? I'm sorry if you do. But the Acolyte premiered on June 4th of 2024. The other 6 episodes after the first 2 were released through July 16th. So the finale of the Acolyte was in late or mid-July. And then over the next week or two, people were going after the Acolyte, saying it was the worst thing that Disney had released in Star Wars. They were ruining Star Wars. It notably was not renewed. Viewership was plummeting, and, you know, people were not thrilled by it because what my friend who's really into Star Wars said was they pissed on the lore. And I'm not familiar enough with Star Wars lore to know if that's true or not, but I've heard a lot of people mention something in that same spirit. So I think that it's probably fair to say. But that happened in mid-July of 2024, okay? When did Star Wars Outlaws launch? It launched about a month and a half later in August, at the end of August 2024. They also did their whole kit and caboodle with their early access, with the pre-order bonuses, with everything. You know, they did it very, very standardly. So most of the coverage of the game was kicking off in mid to late August, just within like 4 weeks of the Acolyte debacle. And so I do think, I know some people have been memeing on Ubisoft for all of this, being like, no, Star Wars is bigger than it's been in a long time. Yes, this year. Last year, people were saying Star Wars was dead. Like, I remember seeing many videos of people claiming that did quite well. Okay. So Star Wars was in a rough spot when the game launched, without a doubt. I would agree with that. Is that the sole reason the game flopped? No, I don't think so. I think it also just was not ready for prime time, frankly. It was pretty buggy. It had some bizarre design decisions. And what you need to understand about this whole thing is Ubisoft Massive, they make the Division games. That's what they do. And they seemingly are pretty good at it because those games make Ubisoft a lot of money, apparently. But they were assigned Star Wars Outlaws and Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. And they had to put those games out within a year of each other. Originally, Avatar was supposed to release like a year prior to that. Like, I think the original plan was late 2023 was the plan. But that, of course, slipped. So they had to now put these games out within 12 months of each other. And this is not the kind of game that they typically make. I mean, they are not a studio that makes open world adventure games. Like, they make these always online, interconnected, shared multiplayer experiences, third person shooters. And that's what they do. And they're pretty good at it. But they don't make games like this. They just don't. And it kind of showed, frankly. It just kind of showed. And there were a lot of design decisions that just didn't make sense. Like, for example, you see the speeder bike that Kay is using? It's a cool idea. Of course, give players a speeder bike, let them ride around this big planet that you made. Obviously, no duh. Great idea. But they would have a bunch of other little systems and features that weren't, like, didn't flow very well. They didn't have like free combat, free shooting combat on the biker. Like, you can't just free aim and shoot. You had to use a pre-aimed thing. And so that was weird. They had other things like the combat and the gun juggling system worked very similar to Uncharted 2 or Uncharted 3, where if a rifle drops on the ground, you had to go pick it up and then you could use it until it runs out of ammo and then you drop the rifle. Okay, it's kind of arcadey, but whatever. But if you hopped on to the bike, Kay would drop the gun every single time. Like, she couldn't carry it with her. If she went down a ladder, she would drop the gun before going on the ladder, which always felt insane. You're like, oh my God, we're being chased by stormtroopers. Oh God. Set the rifle down. Oh, I have to go down 6 feet of ladder. Oh man, I wish I had my gun, but I can't get it. I remember trying to like glitch the game into like dropping the gun off the ledge and then going down the ladder to pick it up off of that. It was just weird. Like, and those were active choices that they made for some reason to not let you carry the guns from room to room to room. It was just odd. And there were a lot of things like that. The biggest problem, in my opinion, I see some of you guys echoing it as well, was the AI. Frankly, the AI was pretty dumb. It just was like, it just was dumb. Like, we've all seen the highlight reels. I showed you guys the clip in my review where there were a bunch of like raiders coming to a farm, and the farm, like, you go and you're just supposed to defend the farmers from the raiders that are coming up. And so I just stood in one spot, didn't move. And then speeder bike. They come up, they park, they hop off, you shoot them dead, they die. Another speeder bike parks right next to them, hops off, shoots, die. Next one comes up. Like, zero zero awareness of what was going on around them, because they're like, oh, my buddy just got killed in front of me. Let me park next to him and hop off very slowly. And it just happened until the mission was over. And it was like a solid 3 minutes of that. It was really, really bad. And it's too bad because I do still think there's a lot of fun to be had in Star Wars Outlaws. I think if you like Star Wars games, you actually probably will really like this. There are some clever things that they do in here. Like, for example, they have the in-game, like, card game Sabacc, which is like a Star Wars card game, or they have in-game like racing where you can bet on races for these like alien horses, right? And they have systems in place so like as you walk around the environment, you can hear NPCs talking to each other, and if you pay attention, sometimes they will let loose information. Hey, just so you know, blah 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 is gonna throw the race tonight. Yeah, he's gonna throw every race that he's in. Oh, really? Oh, cool. And so you then go and you use that information to bet against that horse, alien horse thing, and you can win lots of money on it. Or like other little bitty systems where somebody might mention a drop of some cargo that's really valuable and they're going to go pick it up later. And it's tucked away in the corner of a cliff to the west of the big city. And so you go and you find the cargo stash and you get a bunch of loot. There's a bunch of clever little ideas like that in the game. You wouldn't know that because the rest of the game was like really, really rushed. And so you didn't even have time to appreciate little bitty things like that. They also had, of course, things like seamless planet surface to space exploration. So if you wanted to just go from planet surface into space and then go get in a dogfight in space, you could do that. You know, Starfield could never, but you could do it in this game. And it's too bad because, again, I think that there's a lot of fun ideas here. It was just rushed. And what was funny at the time is that Yves Guillemot, our friendly neighborhood French elf, he even said at the time, typically we iron out these small frictions. I remember small frictions because it was such a weird way of saying it, but small frictions. And he's like, we iron them out after launch, and that usually has worked well for us. Like, we launch the game, and what he's effectively saying is that we typically launch our games with some issues and then we fix them after launch. And normally that's fine. But what he pointed out at the launch of Star Wars Outlaws was that didn't work this time. Players were not okay with the little frictions. They were quite upset by them and said, okay, I'm just not going to buy it. And that did crazy damage to the financial performance of Star Wars Outlaws. And that actually caused them to kind of reflect on their overall approach to these games, because notably they delayed AC Shadows out of the entire year. They pushed it to the following year to improve it. They changed a lot of their policies, delaying everything in their lineup. Now it looks like even the Black Flag remake was significantly delayed as a result of Star Wars Outlaws being kind of rushed and not doing well. They delayed that. They delayed pretty much everything else in their roster back to get more polish time. So funnily enough, like it actually seems like Star Wars Outlaws might have actually long-term done a lot more good, because it caused Ubisoft to be like, oh, people want finished games. Oh, oops. And to their credit, Star Wars or AC Shadows, very polished. Initially, it wasn't looking like it was going to run on the Steam Deck. They got it running on the Steam Deck because they were given more time to polish. Like a bunch of little bitty things like that, quality of life improvements that are impactful. And my hope is that it means moving forward, they actually learn from the mistake long term. But to be fair, this is not the first time they've done this. If you remember Ghost Recon, was it Breakpoint? This game, as you can see, has a 56 on Metacritic. And the reason it did was because it was horribly broken when it launched. Like, it was just super rushed. It was bad. It was just bad. It was nowhere near ready. And when this happened, it also caused a bit of a scandal at the time. And Ubisoft came out and they said, hey, we're listening to you. We're not going to do this. We're going to give more polish time. We're going to work on this moving forward. We're not going to make these mistakes again. But with Ubisoft, you just give it 5 years and then they repeat the same mistakes all over again. Like, this is just how they do it. Okay. So I'm sure that they're going to like delay the Black Flag remake. They're going to delay AC Hexe, and they're going to delay some of this other stuff. And then in 5 years, we'll be right back to where we were to like last year. It's just that's just how it goes. It's just repeat the cycle. So unfortunately, it's a very common thing, but it does look like they're actually trying to avoid that aspect of of Star Wars Outlaws issues. As he goes on, these comments are particularly interesting because just last year, Ubisoft blamed players' expectations, stating that the current challenges in the market and gamers expecting extraordinary experiences, simply delivering solid quality is no longer enough. Yeah, I mean, as in the words of Yves Guillemot, doing things the way they had been doing them wasn't working anymore because players, I think, were getting more picky, which is what happens when you raise the prices. It's what happens when you bundle in all of these extra paid components and you're monetizing the crap out of them. Before players decide to put their money up, they want to make sure their money is going to be well spent. And so if they see a product that has rough edges, they're just not going to buy it. And here's the other piece that is like the omnipresent elephant in the room for Ubisoft. And I've even spoken to like marketing people at Ubisoft who have mentioned this as well. They're like, yeah, we know it's a problem, but it's way above our pay grade. Everybody knows that Ubisoft games go like 50, 60% off within like 6 months of launching. Like everybody knows it. You wait 3 months, you wait 6 months, you wait 9 months, you're going to get Star Wars Outlaws for 50% off. You're going to get AC Shadows for 50% off. So if you can just wait, you can get a massive discount on these games and probably get it for a good bit less than it might be even worth, you know? Like Star Wars Outlaws, solid game. Is it worth 70 at launch? At launch, definitely not. I don't think. But, you know, now that it's been fixed up and stuff, if you can get that game for like 30, 40, 50, that's a good deal on that game. There's a lot of fun to be had in there. And everybody knows that you can get it there if you just wait. Like 3 months, 6 months, like eventually it just goes on sale. You know, like I said, Ubisoft people know that that's a problem, but for whatever reason, executives are insistent on moving units. And I think what it is that all of Ubisoft's games, I should say most of Ubisoft's games, have some sort of long-term monetization component. Like you think AC Shadows, they'll sell you skins, they'll sell you cosmetics and all sorts of stuff. Even games like AC Origins, Odyssey, they have it too from years ago. And so if they can just get you in, the odds, even if you only have a 1% chance or a 2% chance of spending extra money on the cosmetic shop, if they can get 100 people in, hey, that's 2 people buying skins at $15 a pop. Like we're starting to recoup some of it. And the math is pretty clear. When somebody's willing to spend money on one cosmetic, they're willing to spend money on 15. Like usually if you're the type of gamer who pays money for skins, you buy a lot of them. You're not just buying one, you know? That's typically what happens, which is why games like, you know, a Fortnite or Call of Duty, they do gangbuster numbers because people are willing to spend money on those skins. So, you know, I think that's part of it. Is they just sell it at a discount to get you in, and then, you know, you have a sliver of chance of spending $1 bajillion on cosmetics. He further explained, quote, "We did heavily improve the game by troubleshooting and debugging, as I said in those early weeks, and when it is released on upcoming consoles, such as the Switch 2, it will have a new version. The improvements to the game are not finished, but we will continue improving it." So they're still working on it, allegedly. I also saw some people clip this bit and say, and when it is released on upcoming consoles, such as the Switch 2, it will have a new version. And people took that as confirmation that new consoles are coming, and people were trying to say the PlayStation 6 is inbound. I don't think that's what, I mean, we're talking about a live translation, like from French to English, and, you know, maybe the translator said something in plural when he meant it in singular. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring it to next gen consoles when those eventually show up. Or maybe he's just talking about the Switch 2 and the Xbox Ally Rogue Series X, Ally X, whatever. I don't know, but I wouldn't read too much into that. Even though the franchise's inconsistency remains a valid concern, Star Wars Outlaws was far from a polished release. The game was filled with bugs, had poor animation, lacked overall refinement. MP First's review of Star Wars Outlaws gave it a 6.5 out of 10. If I could sum up Star Wars Outlaws is it would basically be a massive fetch quest that looks pretty and manages to capture feeling and look of Star Wars, but is ultimately hindered by its repetitiveness, bare bones gameplay, and lack of polishing. I think the polish issues were significant. The gameplay systems, like I said, a lot of those design decisions were just bizarre for like basic things like speeder bike combat, like the AI being so brain dead that it just kind of removed the fun out of a lot of it. So without a doubt, those are major issues. They've made a lot of improvements. I haven't gone back recently to try it. I did try it after the first big wave of updates and improvements they added. At that time, I still thought it had a little ways to go, but who knows? Maybe now it's significantly better. Maybe we need to go back and try it again. I don't know. I don't know. But either way, I think he's right about why Star Wars Outlaws flopped. It was not polished. I think that's a major component of it. It had a few items that still needed to be polished. It was a lot of items and a couple of big items. Like AI in a game that features a lot of stealth, that's a big problem. If it's bad, that's a huge component. It's like a COD game having bad gunplay. Like it just doesn't work. If you get that wrong, it doesn't work. Even if you have other cool ideas and cool things going on, it just doesn't work. And then I do think that the reputation of the brand did hinder it. Star Wars was getting blasted in online media across the board in like mid to late 2024. So it's not a surprise to me that it struggled. I do think if they were to launch it like a month ago, 2 months ago, it probably would have ridden that wave of Star Wars hype a little bit more because Battlefront 2 was doing really, really well. So I do think that was a component. But I think the core issue, the main issue, was just that Star Wars Outlaws was... I think it was rushed. It was not ready. Needed more time and love. And it was being put together by a team that had never really made a game like this before and didn't seem that crazy passionate about it at the same time. So I think that's a big component of it.
He took my thing. Red flag.